the fourth branch program, the place for common sense. Today is June 24th, Monday, June 24th, 2019. I am MD. If you join us for the first time, welcome to the fourth branch. If you've been here before, thank you for your contribution. The fourth branch program is not associated with any political party. Our ultimate objective is to perfect the union, and we can only do that by removing ignorance, which is the biggest obstacle to any democracy. This is segment 1, and today we only have just this segment in which we will continue the reading of the Mueller report. Of course, before that, we will give you some context. Stay tuned as we'll start making some preparation for detail, and we'll be right back to continue with the reading of the Mueller report. Live from New York City at the top of the hour, every weekday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., the Fourth Branch presents discussions, debates, commentaries on social, political issues, current events, sports, entertainment, religion, education, science, and every Saturday at 10:30 a.m. for a full presentation on controversial issues such as abortion, homosexuality, war on blacks. Are Republicans dumber than Democrats? Information which might irritate you, make you cry, make you laugh, but above all, will make you smarter. Join us every time. It is the right thing to do. It is the only way to keep your sanity in a world of chaos, hypocrisy, immorality, and deception. Welcome to Common Sense. Once again, welcome to the fourth branch program. This is segment 1. As I mentioned earlier, we will have just this one segment. This time we did go away to the wild, and we will share some of what we have learned in the process as we continue with this program. It is also a reminder that in a couple of days, June 26th, there will be the first Democratic debate. There will be two, 26 and 27, and the first one will happen in 26 and the second in 27. The Democrat Party divided the group of candidates to participate in the debate in two, 10 for each night. In other words, there are a few people, a few candidates who did not make the cut. There were criteria to be able to participate in the two debates. In the meantime, also there is other individual. I believe he just says, not quite sure of the pronunciation of the last name, but we'll bring that back to you as we have been doing with the 2020 presidential election. And for each candidate, we give you kind of a synopsis of his or her credential in order to make the decision of picking the right candidate a little bit much easier. Now let's get back to the reading of the Mueller report. Now, for those of you who may not necessarily be interested or be in tune of what the Mueller report is about, a couple of years ago, more specifically in May of 2017, Robert S. Mueller was appointed special counsel to look into the interference of Russia in the 2016 presidential election. Along with that mandate, Robert Mueller was also provided the authority to look into any kind of activities that may have been used either by Trump himself or by any of his associates to impact, to influence the 2016 presidential election. A few months ago, more specifically in March, I believe, Robert Mueller completed the investigation and provided the document to the Department of Justice, DOJ. Now, just immediately prior to that, what ended up happening is Donald Trump appointed William Bill Barr, as the new Attorney General. And William Barr was specifically picked by Donald Trump because he made a lot of favorable comments about Trump and against the investigation. So as such, as you might have already known, that Donald Trump likes the idea of individuals who speak to defend him. Now, for those of you who don't know what that means our democracy is being eroded right under our eyes, because the Attorney General, although appointed by the President of the United States, does not serve the President of the United States. So as such, Bill Barr is just an individual who is there doing the bidding of Donald Trump. Now, if nothing happens, if the Democrat doesn't really do the job for which the congressmen and women were elected by the time that Donald Trump 4 years in office, and we will not have a democracy to talk about. Now, while that may sound something far-fetched, but as we have already seen, that most of the foundation of our democracy are being eroded right under our nose. And what makes the situation even worse is the fact that the Republicans, both in the Congress and Senate, not only have not done anything to prevent that from happening, but they also have contributed very extensively to helping the executive branch really destroy the system of democracy we have had for the past 2 centuries. So this is not a small matter. So the Mueller report is all the more important. And the reason is because it provides us some sort of window into what Donald Trump, as a citizen of the United States when he was a private citizen, the kind of transaction he had with foreign government, and how now today Donald Trump has managed to use the most powerful office in the land for his own personal gain, for his own personal affairs. Now, anyone who claims to be a patriot and seeing those actions by Donald Trump as okay, now I'm here to tell you, you are no patriot, because a patriot would make the sacrifice of whatever it is, political party, a man, and sometimes even the sacrifice of his or her own life in order to defend the very Constitution of the United States. If that is not, doesn't seem to be something one is willing to do, that individual cannot call himself a patriot. As such, the Mueller report is important, and that's a reason that every day for the past few weeks we have been reading a portion of the Mueller report. We're still reading in volume 1, so we will come back shortly to continue the reading of the Mueller report. The next section in the Mueller report is titled Paul Manafort's two-campaign period meeting with Konstantin Kilimnik in the United States. Stay with me, we will be right back to continue with the reading of the Mueller report. We are on the fourth branch program, the place for common sense. If you are a patriot, you cannot not be outraged, because this is not a matter of being Democrat or being Republican, because the very reason that our democracy survives is because of that very structure of our government. The minute that you don't have any oversight, then at that point the idea of democracy in the United States of America ceases to exist. So if you are a Republican and you think it's okay, then you too are no patriot. There is no other word of saying it. No matter what you hear people saying, trying to sugarcoat, trying to go around to explain it to you, that's all it means. If you are okay with what is currently going on with Donald Trump, with the Republican Party, you categorically are not a patriot. And no matter what you think of yourself, you are not a patriot. Because a patriot is someone who would give or who would make sacrifice sometimes of his or her own life, let alone sacrifice a political party in order to preserve the democracy, to preserve the Constitution, in order to preserve the rule of law. So if you cannot do that, don't talk to anyone about being patriot, because you are no patriot. The Mueller report is the direct outcome of an investigation done in order to discover the extent to which Russia, America's #1 enemy, has infiltrated our country through various individuals who work in the Trump camp. 100, as per the Mueller report, and 17 very closely related to Donald Trump team. Now, no matter how much you spin that, no matter how much outrage one can have, this has never happened in the United States of America. Never. That you have an individual bidding for the highest office in the land, the presidency of the United States, surrounding himself by hundreds of individuals who are either Russian, very closely related to Russia, number one enemy of the United States. 17 of those individuals were very, very close in the Trump campaign, some high-level position. Now you can argue all you want about the fact, well, that was, the investigation wasn't supposed to happen, because that's the Republican argument today. The investigation wasn't supposed to happen. And as such, nothing that isn't matters. Here's the logic of the individual who represent you in Washington. That it is found that America, number one enemy, influence, was in collaboration with the current individual sitting in the Oval Office. In Republican argument, well, the investigation wasn't supposed to happen in the first place, so it doesn't matter. Donald Trump attorney Rudy Giuliani said there is no problem to sleep with someone who is America number one. Donald Trump at some point called it opposition research. As you can see, those are not story people are telling you. Those are not anybody's mindset, anyone's idea as to what Donald Trump and the Republicans are doing. Those are facts, things that happen, things that they said. Those are undeniable facts. They on record. So if you are a patriot and you're looking at that and you're saying, that's okay, and you want to continue to believe you're a patriot, take a look in the mirror and ask yourself that very question. Are you a patriot? Paul Manafort's two-campaign period meeting with Konstantin Kilimnik in the United States. Manafort twice met with Kilimnik in person during the campaign period, one in May and again in August of 2016. The first meeting took place on May 7, 2016 in New York City. In the days leading to the meeting, Kilimnik had been working to gather information about the political situation in Ukraine. They included information gleaned from a trip that former Party of Regions official Yuri Boyko had recently taken to Moscow, a trip that likely included meeting on or about May 5, 2016. While in Washington, Kilimnik had pre-arranged meeting with State Department employees. Late on the evening of May 6, Gates arranged for Kilimnik to take a 3 a.m. train to meet Manafort in New York for breakfast on May 7. According to Manafort, during the meeting, he and Kilimnik talked about events in Ukraine, and Manafort briefed Kilimnik on the Trump campaign, expecting Kilimnik to pass the information back to individuals in Ukraine and elsewhere. Manafort stated that opposition bloc members recognized Manafort's position on the campaign was an opportunity, but Kilimnik did not ask for anything. Kilimnik spoke about a plan of Boyko to boost election participation in the eastern zone of Ukraine, which was the base for the opposition bloc. Kilimnik returned to Washington, D.C. right after the meeting with Manafort. Manafort met with Kilimnik a second time at the Grand Havana Club in New York City on the evening of August 2, 2016. The events leading to the meeting are as follows. On July 28, 2016, Kilimnik flew from Kiev to Moscow. The next day, Kilimnik wrote to Manafort requesting that they met using coded language about a conversation he had that day. In an email with a subject line, quote, "Black caviar," Kilimnik wrote. Kilimnik wrote in an email, "I met today with the guy who gave you your biggest black caviar jar several years ago. We spent about 5 hours talking about his story, and I have several important messages from him to you. He asked me to go and brief you on our conversation. I said I have to run it by you first, but in principle, I am prepared to do it. It has to do about the future of his country and is quite interesting." Manafort identified, quote, "the guy who gave you your biggest black caviar jar as Yanukovych." He explained that in 2010, he and Yanukovych had launched to celebrate the recent presidential election. Yanukovych gave Manafort a large jar of black caviar that was worth approximately $30,000 to $40,000. Manafort's identification of Yanukovych as, quote, "the guy who gave you your biggest black caviar jar," end of quote, is consistent with Kilimnik being in Moscow, where Yanukovych resided, when Kilimnik wrote, quote, "I met today with the guy," end of quote, and with a December 2016 email in which Kilimnik referred to Yanukovych as, quote, "BG. Part of that is redacted grand jury. Manafort replied to Kilimnik's July 29 email, quote, "Tuesday is best. Tuesday or Wednesday in New York City," end of quote. 3 days later, on July 31st, 2016, Kilimnik flew back to Kiev from Moscow, and on that same day wrote to Manafort that he needed, quote, "about 2 hours," end of quote, for their meeting, quote, "because it is a long caviar story to tell," end of quote. Kilimnik wrote that he would arrive at JFK on August 2nd at 7:30 p.m. and he and Manafort agreed to a late dinner that night. Documentary evidence, including flight, phone, and hotel records, and the timing of text messages exchanged, confirm the dinner took place as planned on August 2nd. As to the content of the meeting itself, the accounts of Manafort and Gates, who arrived late to the dinner, differ in certain respects, but their version of events, when assessed alongside available documentary evidence and what Kilimnik told business associate Sam Patton, indicate that at least 3 principal topics were discussed. First, Manafort and Kilimnik discussed a plan to resolve the ongoing political problem in Ukraine by creating an autonomous republic in its more industrialized eastern region of Donbass. And having Yanukovych, the Ukrainian president ousted in 2014, elected to head that republic. That plan, Manafort later acknowledged, constituted a, quote, "backdoor means for Russia to control eastern Ukraine." Manafort initially said that if he had not cut of the discussion, Kilimnik would have asked Manafort in the August 2nd meeting to convince Trump to come out in favor of the peace plan, and Yanukovych would have expected Manafort to use his connection in Europe and Ukraine to support the plan. Manafort also initially told the office that he had said to Kilimnik that the plan was crazy, that the discussion ended, and that he did not recall Kilimnik asking Manafort to reconsider the plan after the August 2nd meeting. Manafort said, whatever Manafort said is redacted grand jury, that he reacted negatively to Yanukovych sending years later an quote urgent request when Yanukovych needed him. When confronted with an email written by Kilimnik on or about December 2016, however, Manafort acknowledged Kilimnik raised the peace plan again in that email. Manafort ultimately acknowledged Kilimnik also raised the peace plan in January and February 2017 meeting with Manafort. Remaining part of that sentence has been redacted grand jury. Second, Manafort briefed Kilimnik on the state of the Trump campaign and Manafort's plan to win the election. That briefing encompassed the campaign's messaging and its internal polling data. According to Gates, it also included discussion of, quote, battleground states, end of quote, which Manafort identified as Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Minnesota. Manafort did not refer explicitly to, quote, battleground state in his telling of the August 2nd discussion. Remaining part of that sentence has been redacted grand jury. Third, according to Gates and what Kilimnik told Patton, Manafort and Kilimnik discussed two sets of financial disputes related to Manafort's previous work in the region. Those consisted of the unresolved Deripaska lawsuit and the funds that the opposition bloc owed to Manafort for his political consulting work and how Manafort might be able to obtain payment. After the hearing, Gates and Manafort both stated that they left separately from Kilimnik because they knew the media was tracking Manafort and wanted to avoid media reporting on his connection to Kilimnik. Post-resignation activities. That's Manafort, that is. Manafort resigned from the Trump campaign in mid-August 2016, approximately 2 weeks after his second meeting with Kilimnik, amidst negative media reporting about his political consulting work for the pro-Russian party of regions in Ukraine. Despite his resignation, Manafort continued to offer advice to various campaign officials through the November election. Manafort told Gates that he still spoke with Kushner, Bannon, and candidate Trump, and some of those post-resignation contacts are documented in email. For example, on October 1st, 2016, Manafort sent Kushner an email and attached a strategy memorandum proposing that the campaign made the case against Clinton, quote, as the failed and corrupt champion of the establishment, end quote, and that, quote, WikiLeaks provides the Trump campaign the ability to make the case in a very credible way by using the words of Clinton, its campaign official, and DNC members, end of quote. Later in the November 5th, 2016 email to Kushner entitled, quote, Securing the Victory, Manafort stated that he was, quote, really feeling good about our prospect on Tuesday and focusing on preserving the victory, end of quote. And that he was concerned the Clinton campaign would respond to a loss by, quote, moving immediately to discredit the Trump victory and claim voter fraud and cyber fraud, including the claim that the Russians have hacked into the voting machine and tampered with the results, end of quote. Trump was elected president on November 8, 2016. Manafort told the office that in the wake of Trump's victory, he was not interested in an administration job. Manafort instead preferred to stay on the, quote, outside, end of quote, and monetize his campaign position to generate business given his familiarity and relationship with Trump and the incoming administration. Manafort appeared to follow that plan as he traveled to the Middle East, Cuba, South Korea, Japan, and China, and was paid to explain what a Trump presidency would entail. Manafort's activities in early 2017 included meetings relating to Ukraine and Russia. The first meeting, which took place in Madrid, Spain, in January of 2017, was with Gregory Oganov. Oganov, who had previously worked at the Russian embassy in the United States, was a senior executive at the Deripaska company and was believed to report directly to Deripaska. Manafort initially denied attending the meeting. When he later acknowledged it, he claimed that the meeting had been arranged by his lawyers and concerned only the Pericles lawsuit. Other evidence, however, provides reason to doubt Manafort's statement that the sole topic of the meeting was the Pericles lawsuit. In particular, text messages to Manafort from a number associated with Kilimnik suggest that Kilimnik and Boyakin, not Manafort's counsel, had arranged a meeting between Manafort and Oganov. Kilimnik's message states that the meeting was supposed to be, quote, not about money or Pericles, end of quote, but instead, quote, about recreating the old friendship, end of quote, ostensibly between Manafort and Deripaska, quote, and talking about global politics, end of quote. Manafort also replied by text that he, quote, needs this finished before January 20th, end of quote, which appears to be a reference to resolving Pericles before the inauguration. On January 15, 2017, 3 days after his return from Madrid, Manafort emailed Katie McFarlane, who was at that time designated to be the Deputy National Security Advisor and was formally appointed to that position on January 20th, 2017. Manafort's January 15 email to McFarlane stated, quote, I have some important information I want to share that I picked up on my travel over the last month, end of quote. Manafort told the office that the email referred to an issue regarding Cuba, not Russia or Ukraine, and Manafort had traveled to Cuba in the past month. Either way, McFarlane, who was advised by Flynn not to respond to the Manafort inquiry, appears not to have responded to Manafort. Manafort told the office that on the time of the presidential inauguration in January, he met with Kilimnik and Ukrainian oligarch Serhiy Lyovoshkin at the Western Hotel in Alexandria, Virginia. In this meeting, Kilimnik again discussed the Yanukovych peace plan that he had broached at the August 2nd meeting, and in a detailed December 8, 2016 message found in Kilimnik's email account. In that December 8 email, which Manafort acknowledged having read, Kilimnik wrote, "All that is required to start the process is a very minor wink or slash push from DT," end of quote. DT is Donald Trump. An apparent, it is said that on the report, an apparent reference to President-elect Trump. Quote, "and a decision to authorize you to be a special representative and manage this process," end of quote. Kilimnik assured Manafort with that authority, he, quote, "could start the process and within 10 days visit Russia." Yanukovych guaranteed reception at the very top level, end of quote. And that, quote, DT in Ukraine in a few months after his inauguration, end of quote. As noted above, the word following that is marked grand jury, redacted. As noted above, grand jury and statement to the office, Manafort sought to qualify his engagement on and support for the plan. The remaining part of this paragraph, the full remaining part of this paragraph has been redacted, grand jury. On to the next paragraph. On February 26, 2017, Manafort met Kilimnik in Madrid, where Kilimnik had flown from Moscow. In his first two interviews with the office, Manafort denied meeting with Kilimnik on his Madrid trip, and then, after being confronted with documentary evidence that Kilimnik was in Madrid at the same time as him, recognized that he met in Madrid. Manafort said that Kilimnik had updated him on a criminal investigation into so-called Black Ledger payment to Manafort that was being conducted by Ukraine National Anti-Corruption Bureau. The remaining part of this paragraph has been redacted, grand jury. If you are a patriot, you cannot not be outraged, because this is not a matter of being Democrat or being Republican, because the very reason that our democracy survives is because of that very structure of our government. The minute that you don't have any oversight, then at that point the idea of democracy in the United States of America ceases to exist. So if you are a Republican and you think it's okay, then you too are no patriot. There is no other word of saying it. No matter what you hear people saying, trying to sugarcoat, trying to go around to explain it to you, that's all it means. If you are okay with what is currently going on with Donald Trump, with the Republican Party, you categorically are not a patriot. And no matter what you think of yourself, you are not a patriot. Because a patriot is someone who would give or who would make sacrifice sometimes of his or her own life let alone sacrifice a political party in order to preserve the democracy, in order to preserve the Constitution, in order to preserve the rule of law. So if you cannot do that, don't talk to anyone about being patriot, because you are no patriot. Those contacts included matters pertaining to the criminal charges brought by the office and the Ukraine peace plan. In 2018, Manafort returned his longtime polling firm to craft a draft poll in Ukraine, sent the pollster a 3-page primer on the plan sent by Kilimnik, and worked with Kilimnik to formulate the polling questions. The primer sent to the pollster specifically called for the United States and President Trump to support the autonomous Republic of Donbass with Yanukovych as Prime Minister. And a series of questions in the draft poll asked for opinion on Yanukovych's role in resolving the conflicts in Donbass. The poll was not solely about Donbass, it also sought participant views on leaders apart from Yanukovych as they pertain to the 2019 Ukraine presidential election. The office has not uncovered evidence that Manafort brought the Ukraine peace plan to the attention of the Trump campaign or the Trump administration. He continued his efforts to promote the peace plan to the executive branch, U.S. Department of State, into the summer of 2018. Since the release of the Mueller report, actually prior to the release of the Mueller report, the discussion in the Republican camp, per our investigation, we found a number of what we would label as really pretty disturbing. There is a large sector in the Republican camp who have no idea about, when I say no idea, of course they heard about it, but they have no idea as to the severity of what caused that investigation. They didn't even care as what it was. And we found another sector in the Republican Party that spent a great deal of time denying there was ever anything that happened between the Trump camp and Russia. And we also found another group who have every possible way to rationalize, to justify the collaboration of an individual who is now the president of the United States with a foreign entity. This is pretty troubling. First, you have the ignorant who don't know anything about anything that's going on, and they don't seem to care. And what's even more alarming is the fact that we do have the individual in the media, Fox in particular, and a number of others, who have made it a business to deceive those individuals, to mislead them, not by accident, not because they made a mistake. Just like as a human being, I may say something that's wrong, then I come back later and correct it. That's a mistake. But I'm referring to the deliberate approach of misleading the audience. If you tune into Fox, I guarantee you that most of everything you know about this country, most of everything you know about any administration, Democrat or Republican, is false, wrong, and misleading. During the Obama tenure, for most of his tenure in office, 53 to 62% of Republicans believe something that's absolutely false. Those are among the individuals who have no idea what's going on in the country, but that's being instructed by those people that I just mentioned, who would deceive them, mislead them, because it benefits that group. Well, when I say that group, the group that mislead that large group. For instance, Fox benefit of people being dummified because it helps them keep a large audience and as such charge advertising money. So it pays to mislead its audience, it pays to dumbify its audience. So you can almost rest assured that a very sizable, a large group of people who regularly tune into Fox, listen to Rush Limbaugh, Glenn Beck, those type of people, Laura Ingraham, Tucker Carlson, etc., you can rest assured that 60 to 70% of people who listen to those individuals, they have no idea what's true. They think they know what's true because those individuals deliberately mislead them, so they walk around with what they think is the truth, so they can have argument with an individual thinking they know the truth. In fact, all they know is a bunch of lies that were passed to them by individuals who could not care less that they become dumber, because as far as people like Laura Ingraham, Tucker Carlson, or Sean Hannity, they make a fortune out of making sure people stay dumb. So why would they change that? So that's the first group. And then you have a second group which spend a lifetime trying to deny the fact that there was ever anything between the Donald Trump team and Russia. You may recall that it started with nothing at all, to talking about Russian, to we didn't have dirt, to it's okay to have dirt, and so on and so forth. So the goalposts start being moved from have nothing whatsoever to do with Russia to okay, fine, I was in bed with Russia. Now I want you to pause as a patriot, not as a Republican or as a Democrat. I want you to pause for a moment to think about what that means. You have an individual in the Oval Office whose highest virtues is lie. Not because we say that, that's all he does. The highest virtue of the individual sitting in the Oval Office is to lie to you. That's not a small thing, as some Republicans try to justify that it's okay. He just lied. Everybody lies. No, that's not a defense. First of all, not everybody lies. Yes, some people may lie under a certain circumstances, but nobody lies like Donald Trump. As I mentioned before, I don't even think the devil lies as much as Donald Trump does. That's not acceptable. We expect the individual who sit in the Oval Office to have the high integrity. Have you already forgotten that? That it's okay that you have an individual who lies, who is a crook, a criminal? Have you forgotten that this is important for our country to at least have some standing in the world, that we put in the Oval Office an individual we can look up to, we can point to our children as the individual we would like them to grow up, to become, to be like? Can you say that? Can you tell your children or your grandchildren, I want you to turn like Donald Trump? Can you? Seriously, can you look in the mirror and say, can you look your children or your grandchildren in the eye and say, I want you to turn just like Donald Trump? I guarantee you know you won't, you can't. Shouldn't that be enough for you to understand that that individual cannot be accepted as the president of the United States? Cannot be promoted, cannot be defended? Shouldn't that be enough? But it's not, because we have a sector in the Republican Party who spend all the resources that they have in order to defend Donald Trump for sleeping with the enemy. Now we have another large group coming up, bringing forth an argument, quite an interesting one, that, you know, it was okay for Donald Trump to do that, because if Democrats had the opportunity, they would have done the same thing. I want you to really listen to what those people are saying, because when people say things, sometimes they think everybody would do the same thing. Maybe you don't know everybody, and your defense for the individual you're trying to defend is, well, impossible. Defending Donald Trump is indefensible. You cannot defend Donald Trump because it's impossible to do so. He has done things that no other human being has done in terms of debasing, the defrauding, in terms of stealing, scheming individual, and lying on top of that. No other individual on this planet has gotten to the point of lying as much as Donald Trump has. That's the individual who's trying to defend. Now those people bring forth this argument. Democrats are complaining because, well, they didn't have the opportunity. They would do the same thing if given the opportunity. Now I want you to listen to the last two rationale that I provided to you. Now the first one, you could say those people in the first group, ignorant, hopefully some of them old enough will just die away, and the young one would begin to learn that they were duped, they were fooled, and they may get better in life. That group, time will help. But listen to what the second group is doing. The second group is making the argument, was making the argument for almost 2 years, well, Donald Trump as the ringleader, that there was absolutely no interaction whatsoever, no collusion, so to speak, camp in Russia. And most of the people we've met, we conversed with, we interviewed, most of those Republicans, especially those who support Donald Trump, they repeat the same line over and over as if that would make it true. Now, after the release of the Mueller report, and as more and more people begin to digest what's in the report, the argument can no longer be Donald Trump did not collaborate with Russia, because it shows you, even the reading that I'm doing, every time that I read about a portion of the report, can clearly see all the connection between the Trump camp and Russia. So the argument that there was no connection between Trump and camp and the Russian, this argument is no longer valid. So they have to drop the argument. And if you're watching yourself doing those things, you have to start asking yourself, what the hell am I doing? Are you a patriot, or are you just a Trump puppet? Or you so much being, your strength so much being pulled, you cannot escape? Now here's the argument that's being brought forth. The Democrat would have done the same thing. Now I want to pause for a moment to say a couple of things before I close. Let's assume for 1 second. Let's assume for 1 second that the statement the Democrat would have done the same thing is true. You think that would be a defense for a patriot? That you have the individual who actually sit in the Oval Office, was helped by a foreign entity, and the argument is Democrats would have done the same thing, is an argument. Do you see how troubling such an argument is? That you are really saying that neither Republican nor Democrats would do anything to protect the country. They would simply sell the country if it means for them to get a win. That's what that statement means. Democrat, that's the argument currently Republicans are advancing, that Democrat would have done the same thing. As I mentioned, and I wrote about it on the People Branch, and I strongly encourage you to take a look on the peoplebranch.org. No Democrat would not have done the same thing. I know that, I'm certain of that, I gave you proof of that. Democrat would not have done the same thing, because Democrat doesn't take a bullhorn claiming that they are patriot. But every time that they are offered opportunity to prove they are patriot, they show they are patriot. Yeah, you know, it's like people claiming they are Christian, but everything that they do resemble very closely to what the devil would do, but are Christian. So Democrats don't do like, you know, Republican claiming they patriot, but they do live like patriot because they are patriot. Now I strongly encourage you to head to peoplebranch.org website. I strongly encourage you to do so, because there you will find an article that I posted not too long ago. I believe it's the next to the last article that I posted that provides you proof that no Democrats would not have done the same thing as Donald Trump. Now, to give you the gist of the article, I provided in 3 different occasions, 3 candidates, Democrat that is, were approached by Russia, the same country that Donald Trump administration willingly joyfully accepted the help from the same country was approach Democrats candidate for president. In all three occasions, Democrats said thanks, but no thank you. So you see, trying to use the argument that Democrat would have done the same thing is not a good argument for two reasons. One, if indeed Democrat would do the same thing, that means we have a big problem in the country, because neither Democrat nor Republican would fight to protect the Constitution of the United States. No, Democrats would not have done the same thing, because Democrats know that to protect the Constitution of the United States is much more important than to get a win. And you know what's ironic about what I just said? In all three occasions that Democrats rejected the help from Russia, in all three instances, those Democrats also lost the elections. But they did something that, ironically, the first time that Russia contacted a Republican party, Russians were received with open arms. So claiming you are a patriot, they can say anything they want. This is a free country, right? You can say whatever you want, but that doesn't make you such. Because to be a patriot, you have to live like a patriot. You have to act like a patriot. And the Mueller report so far has proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that Republicans are not, I repeat, patriot. Yes, they claim to be, but first whiff of a foreign entity, the United States #1 enemy, offering help, they say the hell with the Constitution of the United States. You are a patriot. You cannot not be outraged, because this is not a matter of being Democrat or being Republican, because the very reason that our democracy survives is because of that very structure of our government. The minute that you don't have any oversight, then at that point, the idea of democracy in the United States of America ceases to exist. So if you are a Republican and you think it's okay, then you too are no patriot. There is no other word of saying it. No matter what you hear people saying, trying to sugarcoat, trying to go around to explain it to you, that's all it means. If you are okay with what is currently going on with Donald Trump, with the Republican Party, you categorically are not a patriot. And no matter what you think of yourself, you are not a patriot. Because a patriot is someone who would give up, who would make sacrifice sometimes of his or her own life, let alone sacrifice a political party in order to preserve the democracy, in order to preserve the Constitution, in order to preserve the rule of law. So if you cannot do that, don't talk to anyone about being patriot, because you are no patriot. That was an update through the prism of common sense. Join us again at the top of the hour. I am MD, host of the Fourth Branch program, the place for common sense. Send us comments, criticism, suggestion, or simply let us know how we're doing. Thank you for watching. See you in just a bit. Fourth Branch podcast is brought to you in collaboration with the People Branch publication, which can be found on the People Branch website, located at peoplebranch.org. That's peoplebranch.org. That's peoplebranch.org website, in which you will find a number of very interesting articles. My name is Mike Duchesne, MD for short. I hope you have a great afternoon or a great evening, whichever it happens to be. Hopefully you can join me again next time for another interesting episode of this podcast. That was the Fourth Branch, live from New York. Good day.